Hi everyone, welcome back to Everyday Crochet. I'm Marissa, and in this video we are going to be picking up hook and yarn, and we are going to be learning the most basics that you need to begin crocheting. We're going to be talking about chains and single crochet stitches, and then if you follow along this tutorial at the end, you're going to have a little square of single crochet stitches that you can use as a coaster. So grab your yarn, grab your hook, and let's get going. All right, so for this video, I'm going to be stitching with a 5.5mm crochet hook. This is a rose gold streamline from Furls Crochet, and then I'm going to be using some acrylic worsted weight yarn for my project as well. If you were looking to get the same gauge as this video, just to be super accurate, that is what I'm working with. I'm 5.5mm hook, worsted weight acrylic yarn. Okay, so before we even start chaining, which is the first thing we're going to do, we're going to talk about how to hold a crochet hook and how to hold yarn, because those holding your yarn, the yarn itself, and your crochet hook are what's going to create your tension. So there's a couple ways you can hold a crochet hook. Some people hold it like over it, you can hold it under. It's really how it feels comfortable in your hand. I'm sure there are purists that are say like one way is proper, one way is not. But honestly, whatever is comfortable for you and your body, you're going to be doing a lot of repetitive movements. You don't want to do anything that's going to give yourself an injury. So whatever feels natural and comfortable for you is totally fine. I hold it like this, like a wand. And then, so for yarn, what I do is I drape the tail of my yarn over the front of my fingers. And then I have my working yarn really between my middle finger and my forefinger. And that grip between those fingers is what's going to give my tension. And then I can use kind of my pointer. I can use my pointer finger to manipulate those stitches. So you really just kind of want to hold it like that, and that's going to give you the ability to manipulate your yarn. And you want to make sure that your tension is even. So as we start doing chains, you might see some are looser, some are tighter. You really want to hold it so that it's creating an even shape, and we'll show what that looks like in a second. So get your yarn in your hand between forefinger and middle finger, and then you're going to get your hook and your hand in a way that feels comfortable. And the first thing we're going to do today to get started is we're gonna, and this is basically how you're going to start 99% of the time, we're going to create a slip knot. So you're going to want to, if you don't know how to create a slip knot, you're going to cross over. So you're going to have a little loop, hold it with your thumb, and then you're just gonna tighten by pulling this end, put it on your hook, and pull tight. You don't want to have it super tight. Give yourself just a little bit of wiggle room there, just a little bit of wiggle room like that. All right, so now we've created a slip knot. You're gonna want to have that on your hook. Generally hold it with your forefinger like this. Hold it with your forefinger. Now we're going to start chaining. So chaining is really the most basic building block of crochet. So many projects that you're going to work on are going to start with chains. And chains are a really important thing to get right and consistent early on when you're learning crochet, because as I said, that's going to determine your gauge. That's going to determine the size of your project. That's going to determine how even your stitches look. So getting that correct is super important. So what I would recommend once we kind of start working on chains, we're gonna do about 20. If you've never crocheted before or you're fairly new, I would recommend either doing another 40 or another 20, another 40, or pulling it out, just doing another 20 and practicing getting it really consistent, because this is also building that dexterity. It's building that muscle memory. And the sooner you do that before you do anything else, every other element of your crochet is going to come together that much quicker when you can build that confidence and your tension, and you build that dexterity. So we're going to get started with chaining. So we got our slip knot on our hook. We're holding, I've got my hook kind of like this in my hand. I hold this piece of yarn, this loop, with my forefinger. And then we're gonna do what's called a yarn over. So we're just gonna yarn over. So we've essentially got 2 loops on our hook. You're gonna pinch just below this knot with your thumb and your middle finger. And we're gonna pull through. And that creates our first chain. Tip that way so you can kind of see it. And then once I do several more chains, it'll be more easy to see, and we'll show you the different elements of a chain, the different parts of it. So again, let's repeat that process. So we're gonna yarn over. So we have 2 loops on our hook. We're gonna pull through. Let's do that again. Yarn over, pull through. We now have 3 chains. And we're going to repeat that process. Yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through. And we're going to do that till we have 21 chains on our hook. So right now I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Play with my yarn here. 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, and 21. So we're going to look at our chain here. Tip that up so we can see it. So you can see, generally speaking, all of the chains are fairly even. They look fairly uniform. Nothing's too much bigger or smaller than anything else. And so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to pull it out real quick. I'm going to do it a little unevenly so you can see what I'm talking about. So we're going to do... I'm just doing a bunch of like different tensions. Okay, so if your chain is looking a little bit like this, you can see some of these are a little bit smaller, some of them are quite a bit larger. These guys are small, these couple are really large. If you're doing your chain and they're looking a little uneven like that, I would really recommend just pull out your hook and pull out your stitches, what we call frogging, until you get back to the beginning, and redo those until they're looking even. Again, we want to build that muscle memory, we want to build that dexterity. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. Okay, we've got 21. Again, I've got a couple here that are really large in the middle, so I'm just actually gonna go back. I'm gonna pay attention to my own advice and I'm gonna redo it. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So I've got 9. Tuck back on through. 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, and 21. Again, I've got a couple that are big, so we're gonna go back. I did it perfectly the first time, and now I'm trying to show not to like messing up. And this is why we do it. Okay, so we've got 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that. So we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna count these, make sure we have 21. So I'm gonna actually take my hook out just for ease of use. All right, so how do we count our chains? So you can see each one, there's a little V here. Actually, let me use a little pointer tool, I'll use a little tapestry needle. So we can see these V's. Each V here, that is one chain. So we're gonna go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. We have 21 with the loop coming out of our hook. All right, so I'm gonna put the hook back in just so I don't lose that loop. All right, so we've got our 21 chains. And now let's talk about the different parts of a chain. So I talked about, we have these V's. This is the top of the chain. We have this front loop and this back loop. Front loop's that's closest to you, the back loop that's further away. There is also a bump on the back of the chain. Some patterns might ask you to start stitching into the back loops. So if that's what they're talking about, they say stitch into the back loop of your chain, they're talking about these little third bumps back here. Most of the time, however, you're going to be crocheting into the front of the chain. So that would be these V's up at the top. All right, so we're pretty comfortable with chains. Hopefully you've done a bunch. I certainly have. So now we're gonna start working on your first crochet stitch, which is the single crochet stitch. Now, if you're looking at a crochet pattern, a chain will be abbreviated to CH. I'll have this on the screen, and then it will tell you how many you need to do. So CH 21, and then it will tell you, and then it'll say row 1 SC for single crochet, whatever the stitch shape is. So in this case, SC single crochet, and then how many you need to do. So we're going to do 20 single crochets into our 21 crochet stitches. So what we're going to do, and this is really common in most patterns, where we're not going to stitch into this first chain here. We're actually going to stitch into the second chain from the hook. And that's because, generally speaking, if you are crocheting in rows, which is what we're going to start with, at the end of a row, we're going to chain 1 to turn the work around. And so that chain 1 does not count as a stitch. So this 21st chain here, we don't want to work into, because that's going to count as that turning stitch on the row. So, all right, get ready. We're going to do our first single crochet stitch. So for your single crochet stitch, you're going to want to go into this loop here. So we've got our 2 loops for our chain. We're going to want to go into this loop here. So now you see we have 2 loops on our hook. We're once again going to yarn over. We're going to pull up a loop. So now we have 2 loops on our hook. So we're going to show that again. So we're going to pull that out. We're going to go into this loop here. We're going to yarn over. We're going to pull just through that first loop, 2 loops on our hook. We're going to yarn over again. And then we're going to pull through both loops on our hook and pull a little tight. And that, friends, is your first single crochet. So now we're going to go into the next chain. We're going to repeat that process. So 2 loops on our hook. We're going to yarn over by placing that yarn into the little notch of the hook. Pull up that loop. 2 loops on our hook. We're going to yarn over. We're going to pull through. And again, into the chain, yarn over, 2 loops on our hook, yarn over, pull through, and now we've done 3 single crochets. So let's go again. Yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over again, pull through 2. Into the chain, yarn over, pull up that loop, yarn over, pull through 2. Into the chain, yarn over, pull through 2. And so that is the process of creating single crochets into a chain. This is really the most basic foundation. So really getting these stitches consistent and correct in size. If they look like they're different sizes, it means your tension might be a little off. So if you see anything that again looks funky, you can just pull out your hook, pull out that stitch, put your hook back in, and start again. So yarn over, go into that loop, Oh, nope, that is not what we're working on in this video. We don't want to yarn over yet, my goodness. We want to go into that loop, then we want to pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops. Almost thought you have double crochet by mistake. Okay, so we're going to go to loop, yarn over, pull up 2, and now we're just going to work in this manner until the end of the row. And I know this might not feel like the sexiest thing we're doing, but again, getting these foundations right in a small swatch is really the best way to set yourself up for future larger, more exciting crochet projects. Because what we want to be able to do is create consistent even stitches. We want to be able to count our stitches. And really be confident in knowing that the parts of those stitches. So we just want to go nice and slow. Right. You're getting to the end of our row here. Got 2 left, so we're pulling up the loop. Yarn over, go through 2, and our last one here always looks a little bit funky. We're just going to go right in next to the knot. Like every other time, pull up that loop, yarn over, pull through 2, and that is your first row of single crochet stitches. You did it! Hooray! All right, so let's take a look real quick. I'm going to take my yarn out. All right, a few things while we're in this nice cozy 1 row that we've got. I'm going to bring out some stitch markers just to show a few things. Okay, so if you are new to crochet, let's take a look at this. We've got this nice chain with our first row of single crochets. So each V here we see is a single crochet. So we're going to want to count those V's just to make sure that we have 20. So I'm going to use my needle again just for it's easier to show. Start this end. So we've got this guy hanging out right here. That's not a stitch. That is that chain that we turned, that we didn't stitch into. So we've got our first ones right here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. This last guy over here is number 20. So I would really recommend, if you've got stitch markers, which I always recommend having on hand, just go ahead and pop a stitch marker into that first stitch on your row. That way when you get to the end of the row, you know that you're at the end of the row. This really helps if you're not familiar with what your stitches look like yet. It just helps you keep track and making sure you're not dropping stitches or adding extra stitches. And I definitely recommend count your stitches every row. It's really easy to miss something somewhere and all of a sudden wind up with like 18 or 21. And then you gotta pull things out and it gets frustrating. So put a stitch marker in at the end. Also, just as a tip, if you ever have to walk away from your work for any reason, this loop that's hanging out here, just go ahead and pop a stitch marker on that as well. That way this loop doesn't come out and then you just pull it up to get that loop big again. That way your yarn doesn't accidentally unravel on you. So now we've got our 20 stitches. So real quick, we want to talk about, there we go. So like I said, we have all of these B's, and then on the back side, there's these little nubs here, which we don't work into. We only work into these B's on top here. And as I said, each V is a stitch. All right, so we have done 1 row. Let's get our hook back into our yarn. We're gonna start row 2. All right, we're gonna yarn over. We're gonna pull through and chain 1. So we just created a chain. Pull it out and show you again. We're gonna go back into our yarn. We're gonna yarn over, pull through with a chain. Now we're gonna turn our work. And you might notice, I am left-handed, so when I crochet from left to right. If you're right-handed, you're gonna crochet from right to left. Both are fine, just know that like everything I'm doing is basically reversed. But if you're a lefty, welcome to a video that's facing the right way. So for row 2, we did our chain 1. We're just going to repeat what we did on row 1. So we're going to go flip your work towards you a little bit. You're going to want to see where these V's are. We're going to go into them, go into both the front and back loop. We're going to pull up that loop, pull through both. We got our first chain 1, or our first single crochet. So next stitch, again, we're going to go into that V, into both loops, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2. Go in, pull up a loop, yarn over, go through 2. Go into the stitch, pull up a loop, pull through 2. Now you might see in some patterns, as you gain familiarity with crochet, it might tell you to work into the front loop only or the back loop only. So that would just be either the loop that's closest to you or the loop that's furthest away from you. But for the purpose of just learning and consistency in this time, we are working through both loops, and that's really most common, I think. So we're just going to keep crocheting till the end of the row. And at this point, I'm about halfway down with the row. If you want to go back to that first stitch and once again, just grab a little stitch marker, slide it in there, hook it on. That way, again, you can keep track of where your end of the row is. So we're going to keep going to the end of the row. Nope. See, this time I almost went into one loop of the stitch and not both. So we just want to make sure we're going into both. Even when something feels automatic to us, we can still make mistakes. And then something I really love about crochet is when you make a mistake, unless it happened way further back and you didn't realize it at the time, but generally speaking, correcting it isn't that painful. It's generally very easy to pull out the yarn or frog it and get to where your mistake was and fix it. And that just, sometimes I wish life was like that. All right, this is our last stitch of row 2. So again, we're gonna go in there, pull up our loop, yarn over, go through 2. We're gonna chain 1. So again, we're gonna yarn over, pull through, turn. We're going to take out the stitch marker. Okay, now we're on to row 3, and we're just going to keep repeating this process. We've already done our chain 1. We've turned, going into that first stitch, pull up the loop, yarn over, and pull through 2. In, pull up the loop, yarn over, and pull through 2. And we're going to put the stitch marker back in, like that. I don't know why I felt the need to make a sound effect for my stitch marker. That's not necessary. I'm going to go a little faster here, but continue to go slow. Take your time. Again, make sure your stitches are even, that they look pretty. If there's one where you're like, oh, that's a little wonky looking, go ahead, pull it out, redo it. You'll thank yourself later. It's just going to give you much more consistent looking work. And if you build that habit of it's okay to redo that stitch now, your future crochet self will thank you. All right, so we're gonna work towards the end of this row. Working towards the end of the row. Into the stitch, yarn over, through 2, into the stitch, pull up a loop, row, pull through 2, into the stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, through 2. And we've got to the last stitch of row 3, so we're going to pull over that loop, yarn over, pull through 2, take out our little friendly stitch marker, we're going to yarn over, chain 1, and turn. And now what you can kind of see happening, and this is really because this is such a small swatch we're doing, my piece is starting to curl a little bit. That's totally normal. It's totally fine. If it's curling a lot in on itself, your tension might be too tight. So I might recommend going back and holding your yarn a little looser, making your stitches a little looser so it's not curling so much. This is my end piece. I have not blocked it. I'll talk about what blocking is in a few videos, but you can see it's not curling on itself too much, as the weight of it kind of brings it down as it gets bigger. But we don't want too much curling, because that's generally an indication that your stitches are too tight. Put that over there. All right, I did my chain 1. We're gonna on to row 4. I'm gonna meet you at the end of row 5, and we are going to talk about how to count your rows. Now that we've got a couple going here, so we're gonna do row 4 really quickly. I'm gonna go a little quicker here, but if you need to slow the video down or pause, absolutely do so. We're just gonna go, and we're gonna talk again at row 5, but we're gonna do 20 rows in total, which gives us a nice good swatch, get you some good practice going. So we're gonna keep going. All right. Okay, end of row 4. Into this, nope, into the stitch, get in there. Loop, yarn over, pull through 2, chain 1, take out our stitch marker. You can see I've got like a little DNA thing going on here. It's like curling a little bit. That's okay. It'll all work out in the end. Okay, we're on starting row 5. The stitch. Just keep doing our little single crochets. So we're gonna keep doing these all the way across. Untangle my yarn a little bit more. Turn over. Yeah, that's right. I just completely got lost in the stitch. Again, making sure we're going through both loops. That's the front and back loop of the stitch as we stitch across. Doing one or the other across does create a nice ribbing effect, but that's not what we're working on today. That's in the next video. Stay tuned. Okay, we're at the end of row 5. I'm just gonna do my little chain 1 there, and I'm gonna pop a little stitch marker on while I talk. You go live over here. All right, so this is 5 rows of single crochet, and what I think I did do that stitch a little funky. That's okay. What I want to talk about is how the heck do you count rows? Because this is something that it really honestly took me a long time to learn how to do, and it's really something you just kind of have to, as you gain more familiarity with what stitches look like, it's going to get easier, but we're gonna talk about it right now. Okay, so down here I'm gonna go, it's easier to tell in the middle where it's more consistent than at the sides, so we're gonna talk about the middle. So we've got 2 down here going into the chains. That's row 1. Then we see these 2. That's row 2. Row 3 is these 2 here. Row 4 is here, and row 5 is here. So we're just going to want to look for these kind of upside down, like carrots, or like upside down V's. And then there's a V here. We want to look at those. That. So we're just going to look at these groups of 2 bars. Boop, 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 boop. So that's how you count your rows. So again, just for a second look, we've got 1 here, 2, 3, 4, and 5. But again, if you are like, this is making 0 sense in my brain, one, that's okay, it will come with time, and two, you can always get a, I showed it in my previous video, but I have like a little popper tool that's got numbers on it, and when I'm working something that's a lot of rows, because I tend to lose count very easily, I'll just use that to keep track of my rows so that I'm not having to constantly recount where I am. All right, friends, so we are going to keep stitching in the same manner, doing a row of 20 single crochets all the way across until we reach row 20. So we've got 15 rows to go. It sounds like a lot. It's gonna fly by, and we're gonna keep going until we get to that point. So I'm just gonna do one more row here for the sake of brevity. Let's pull the stitch, go through. All right. Going through it. Going through it. Ooh, ah! That was not my best moment on camera. All right, so we are getting to the end of row 6. So I'd like you to continue going until you have 15 rows. But for the sake of you not having to see me stitch for 40 minutes, I'm going to go ahead and stop my swatch here, which is why I have a completed one with me. So we're going to go here. All right. So keep going until you reach 20 rows and then come back. All right. So if you've done 20 rows, you have a square that looks like this. Should be about that size. I've got my handy dandy little tape measure here, so we're just gonna measure. This is about 5.5 inches by about five inches across. So that's kind of what my gauge was for this. If you're looking to measure and know where you wound up, but if you've been stitching, you probably have tails like this hanging off your project. Marissa, what do we do about that? So now that we're done with our swatch, we're gonna fasten off. And so fasten off is just how we're gonna snip our yarn and finish it off. So we don't have this going on, and then we're gonna weave in our ends. We're gonna talk about that a little bit. So I'm just gonna go ahead. You want to snip, I'm gonna move this so you can actually see. You want to snip off and give yourself a few inches. You don't want it too short because you want enough space to get it onto the needle and then have space to weave it back and forth through some stitches. So really give yourself maybe a little bit more than you think you do. Probably 4 or 5 inches is sufficient. I actually wish I'd done a little bit more. So now you've got your loop hanging out of your project here. And then we're gonna stick our needle or your hook, either one's fine, through that loop. And you're gonna pull the yarn out. You're just gonna tighten it up a little bit. Congratulations, you fastened off your first crochet piece. And now we've got these 2 ugly ends hanging here. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna weave in our ends. So this top one here, you're just going to put your yarn through your tapestry needle. And we are going to just kind of poke it. This is why I love these like kind of bent needles I got on Amazon. It just makes this part easier. So what you're going to want to do is in the stitches below, you are going to weave through them on the same side of work that's facing you. You want to make sure it's not going to the back of the work, otherwise it's going to look a little squirrely. So you want to go through, I would say 5 to 8 stitches in that ballpark is a pretty good number, so that you're not having it not be enough and risk unraveling later, because that's never fun when that happens and you don't want that to happen. All right, so we're gonna pull that a little bit. You want to be careful. You don't want to pull too tight because then it's going to cramp this top corner. It's going to be a little wonky looking. But if you do, you can just use your needle and kind of like pull it out a little bit. And then, so we've pulled out one way. Then you're going to go into like whatever the next loop is. You don't want to go back through the same loop it came out of because then you're just pulling your yarn out. So we're just going to go in and go back the other way as far as you can. And you don't have to go all the way back to the end if you don't want to. But I like to. I think it just like looks a little neater when it's done. Pull that out. Okay, now when you've pulled out your yarn on the other side, just pull a little bit so it's not super visible. So you can see on the other side, you really can't super tell what it looks like. So just pop it back over, and I'm gonna snip this yarn really close in so that no one can tell where it was. It's a secret. It's a secret. No one can tell where it was. All right. I'm gonna just kind of play with my edges a little bit, make sure it looks nice and neat. All right, and then so that's our first end that has been fastened off and woven in and trimmed. We're gonna repeat that weaving in process with our other end from our slip knot at the beginning. So we're gonna get our yarn on our hook there. And if you're working a project that has color changes, or you're working multiple skeins, or like you had to for some reason trim your yarn and rejoin it, which we will cover in another video, but you've got a lot of ends appearing, make sure you build the habit early on of weaving in as you go, because when you get to the end of a project and you're so happy and excited and thrilled that you're done, and then you have 500 ends to weave in, it's kind of the worst. So just really, if you want to build that habit from the start, anytime you're snipping yarn, or restarting it, just weaving in your ends as you go. It's a really good habit to get into, and we're all about building these good habits with this series. So we are done. We have woven in that. Well, we're not done. We're half done. Woven that side. We're gonna go back in here. Back in there. All right, pull through, stretch it out a little bit so it doesn't look funny. We're looking beautiful. Again, trimming that yarn nice and close. Make sure you don't cut any other strands though. I've made that mistake and it's unpleasant. All right, so now I've got this little strip. Yours should look more of this size. So you've got a coaster now. You've completed your first crochet project. You could also use this as like a scrubby if you wanted to. But this is your first crochet project. You've officially accomplished something in crochet. So congratulations on completing that. You should feel really confident now with chains and single crochet stitches. If you've enjoyed this video, you want to continue on your crochet journey with me, our next video, we're going to be covering half double crochets. That's kind of the next stitch up. We're going to do some fun texture stuff with that. So if you've enjoyed this video, hit that subscribe button so you know when that video goes up, and I will see you next time, friends. Thank you so much. Bye.